It had taken John Adams and his allies months of arguing with Congress before they agreed to establish the Continental Navy on October 13, 1775. If you want to hear the full story on that, then you can watch my previous video linked in the description below. But after that was done, the establishment of the Continental Marines was a foregone conclusion. That officially happened on November 10, 1775, when Congress approved a resolution penned by none other than John Adams. The resolution proposed that 2 battalions of Marines be raised. The intention was to use them for an amphibious invasion of Nova Scotia to cut off the main British supply point in North America. But by December of 75, when only 1 battalion had been mustered, the British reinforced Nova Scotia with several thousand troops, and the planned invasion was quickly scrapped. Samuel Nicholas was the first commissioned Marine officer, and he was actually commissioned before any other Continental Naval officer, making him, technically, the first commissioned naval officer as well. To this day, he is recognized as the Marines' first commandant. Tun Tavern was a popular meeting place in Philadelphia, serving as the birthplace and meeting spot for several notable groups, and it is recognized by many to be the place where the first recruiting drive took place for the Continental Marines, though this claim is disputed by some historians. In any event, 5 companies of about 300 men had been recruited by the end of 1775, and they were assigned to the newly commissioned Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Navy, Essex Hopkins. The Navy was able to scrape together a small fleet in Philadelphia's waterfront consisting of 6 ships. In January of 76, Hopkins led the newly formed Naval and Marine Corps out of Philadelphia Harbor with the intent to search out and attack, take or destroy all the naval forces of our enemies in Virginia's Chesapeake Bay, and later attack the British Navy in Rhode Island. However, the harsh reality of winter caused Hopkins to change his plans. In February, he led the fleet out again, this time for New Providence in the Bahamas. Hopkins intended to take the island before the alarm could be raised. He made the bold plan to land the Marines at daybreak. That would be the first of a few miscalculations. The fleet sailed past their intended landing zone and was easily spotted by the British. The British governor of the island, Montfort Brown, fired the cannon to summon the militia to action, which also alerted the American fleet that the game was up. With the element of surprise gone, Hopkins conferred with his captains. It was decided to continue with the invasion, albeit from a different, more obscure landing beach. On March 3, 1776, Captain Samuel Nicholas, along with 234 Marines and 50 sailors, carried out America's first amphibious invasion. Governor Brown quickly realized that his British force was greatly outnumbered. He made little effort to oppose them, but he did manage to slip one small schooner, the HMS St. John, out of Nassau Harbor with 80% of the island's gunpowder stores. This was only possible because of another blunder by Hopkins, who had neglected to assign even a single ship to block the harbor entrance. The expedition was hardly the finest hour for the Marines or Navy, but the island was successfully captured without a man lost. The island's remaining gunpowder, along with numerous brass cannons and mortars, were confiscated for the Continental Army. By the end of 1776, the Marines were given a new assignment. That summer, the British Army had carried out its own amphibious invasion of New York on a much grander scale. Over 30,000 British and Hessians faced off against George Washington and 20,000 Continental troops in the largest military campaign of the war. Washington's men were outmatched, and he could do little more than preserve the army from total destruction. In December, Washington had retreated to safety across the Delaware. After over 4 months of defeats and retreats, he was desperate for a victory to boost morale. A detachment of Marines was assigned to his command to help carry out a secret expedition. However, they did not arrive in time to participate in the surprise attack of Trenton the day after Christmas. Despite this, the Marines would soon see action. On January 3, 1777, Washington's men had an unexpected engagement with the British near Princeton, New Jersey. After an initial attack by Hugh Mercer's brigade was driven back, Washington called on the Philadelphia militia and 130 Marines to fill the gap. The militia was filled with inexperienced troops, and the Marines had never fought a major engagement on land before. Still, they fought valiantly, but were ultimately driven back by a British bayonet charge. Fortunately, Washington would personally lead more fresh troops into the fray, winning the battle for the Americans. At the end of the war, the Continental Marines and Navy would both be disbanded. But after merchant ships were attacked by Barbary pirates in 1794, the Navy was reestablished, now called the United States Navy. It would take a few years for a significant naval force to be built and assembled, but on July 11, 1798, President John Adams, the man who had fought so hard for the establishment of the Continental Navy and Marines, would sign a congressional act reestablishing the Marines as the United States Marine Corps.